Hi, and thanks for joining me today. I've got a showcase video of the cards that I made using Tonic Studios Craft Kit number 39. This one's called Pretty Peonies. And I did make 10 cards out of using this kit. And instead of doing a flip video where I make at least one flat, one layered, one interactive, and one pop-up card, I decided that I just wanted to explore different techniques for how to, add color to these outline dies. So in these first two cards, what I did was I used the media that came in the kit. So we got a sparkle spray, and on this card, I actually tapped some of it out onto my silicone mat, and then using a water brush, I diluted that with water and then just painted with it. And the look that I was able to achieve was, you could just, paint over areas multiple times to build up the color. And so you can get from very light to a more intense color. So that I thought was a lot of fun. But what I noticed is that you lose nearly all of the sparkle. So you get the color, but not so much the sparkle. Whereas on this card, using the same sparkle spray, instead of using water, I actually dipped the my water brush into the tube of sparkle spray directly and painted from there. So you can see the difference in intensity of the colors, even though it's the same medium. And I did a very similar thing with the glitter marker for the leaves. So on the left, I just scribbled some of the glitter marker down, and then using my water brush, mixed a little bit of water in and painted with it from there. Whereas on the card on the right, I actually went direct to paper with the glitter marker itself. And you can see there's not as much of a difference in terms of intensity of color. And also not a ton of difference in terms of sparkle either. There's actually still some sparkle on here, even though it's watered down a little bit. So, if you wanted to structure your product a little bit more, you could use that application and not lose too much of the sort of original characteristics of the glitter marker. And on this card, and for all of my cards, there may be some things that I used from outside the kit. So this in particular is a Tonic nesting die. It's one that I got in a Wednesday deal, I think, and it's the cockle shell layering die set. So that's where that came from. So those are the first two cards that I wanted to show. Then the next card I have features some watercolor pencil work that I did. So watercolor pencils are new to me. I have the Faber-Castell Albert Durr watercolor pencils, which probably, more professional a grade of they're more artist grade than I would certainly need, but I know the way I am. If I bought something that was of lesser quality and I wasn't sort of getting the results that I wanted, I would probably just go and buy something higher quality. And and so I just thought, well, if I'm gonna do that, I may as well just buy, one of the best out there. And that way I'll know that, if I'm not getting the outcome that I want, then I just need to practice more. It's not a matter of using the wrong quality of material. It's not the medium, it's more likely me, and I just need more practice. So that's why I invested in the Albert Durr pencils. They are fantastic because they do emulsify really well in water, and when you're done and you let it dry, then you can go back in with the dry pencil and then just color and then leave it at that and not apply more water, and you can add some of that fine detail and those fine lines. So there are some aspects of this that I really liked how the coloring turned out, and then other aspects that I was a little bit less impressed by. So what I did was I actually put some diamond glaze over it. And I feel like that really saved the element for me because it just gives it a different look. It kind of makes it look a little bit stained glass, and just that gloss and shine, automatically makes it look a little bit nicer, a little bit more polished. And because it adds some of that, so kind of a little bit of a reflection, I think it also sort of detracts from any imperfection in coloring. So I think that turned out pretty well. I did use a 3D embossing folder on this backmost panel, and that came from a Crafter's Companion 3D embossing folder, which I don't have at hand, but I really have started liking the white on white look. And but I didn't, just using plain white cardstock, it just made this card look unfinished. So I've started to emboss the panel, and that way it sort of preserves that negative space, but at the same time makes the card look finished. It makes it look polished. It adds a little bit of interest and texture for sure, especially with these 3D embossing folders, but it doesn't take away from where you want your eyes to focus, which are, where the color is most intense. So it's a really nice way of just kind of filling the space without filling the space, if you know what I mean. So there's that card, and this is one of my favorites. I do have a lot that I like from this set. Here again is another iteration of the same 3D embossing folder. With the die cut this time, I used the Faber-Castell gelatos, and that's another new medium to me, so lots of different techniques. I've been watching a lot of YouTube videos on how to use gelatos, and I have the pastel set, but I'm really curious to get the iridescent and or the metallic set just to see how much of a shimmer and shine you get from them. But basically what I did was I just scribbled down, and then wetting my finger a little bit, I just sort of smudged that gelato medium around on the paper, and I left it imperfect just so that you can still see the texture of the watercolor paper, and it just looks like a messy coloring, which I kind of like the look of that. And these nested ovals, they're actually from a Sizzix stamp and die set, and it's this one here if you're interested. And it comes with a set of nesting dies and then a handful of stamp sentiments to go with it. So pretty simple card. You don't really need a lot with such a beautiful outline die like what we got in this kit. Then my next card here, I painted on black card using my mica powders mixed with a solution of gum arabic and water. So the gum arabic and water solution, gum arabic is a binding agent, so when you mix that with water and something like your mica powders, it's actually what will help the mica powder actually stick to your cardstock. So if you just painted with water, you'd still be able to kind of when you ran your finger over it, the mica would still come off on your finger. Whereas with the gum arabic as a binding agent, it actually binds the mica to the cardstock, so it won't rub off. And here I originally put an outline die of black over top, but it didn't stand out quite as much to me, and it didn't have it looks too dull given that the mica was so shiny. So that's why I die cut the outline die again out of gold foil, and when I put it down, I actually offset it a little bit so you can still see that black, and it just adds so much dimension to it and gives it a really nice effect. And here I use the same frame as this card here. And Also, I did not use an embossing folder, but instead, it's hard to see because it's black on black, but I just die cut another outline die of the same flower, and then I just snipped parts of it away and tucked it under the frame just to give the illusion that this whole panel has this design, but maybe only this part was colored in and foiled to bring attention to it. That was the look I was going for. But again, it's just another way of adding a little bit of texture, a little bit of interest in the negative space. So that's that card. And then the parts that drop out of the gold die, I inlaid back into black and came up with this card. If you've seen any of my videos before, you know that anytime I die cut out of specialty card, I do like to use as much of it as possible, and so I'll often do this where I'll use the outline on one, and then the bits that drop out of it, I'll inlay that into another die cut. And so it's such a different look, all of these really, so it's amazing how you can get so many different looks using the same or similar dyes and just changing the papers or changing your coloring technique. So with this one, I used a frame that is not in the kit. So this one is one of Tonic Studios layering frames, and which one is it? Oh, it's this one right here. So it's the Rose Trellis, and it's really pretty, very ornate. I kind of took that middle frame, and that's what's in there. The With Love sentiment, though, that die did come in the kit, and so I just inlaid some of the gold bits everywhere that wasn't the words. That way the sentiment really, really pops. So there's that card. Then the rest of the cards I have are more in line with die cut inlaying. So on this card, I liked the effect of this one, where you get the lighter and then going inside it's darker. So I thought, well, how can I achieve that with die cut inlaying and just using multiple or different colors of cardstock? So that's what I did here. So I took 3 different shades of pink and die cut them. It is a lot of die cutting, but I enjoy doing this paper piecing and die cut inlaying. It's kind of a very mindful, therapeutic thing for me. So I know it's a little labor intensive and can be like a little tedious seeming to some people, but I really enjoy it. So and I love the effect that this gave so much that I wanted to kind of take it up a notch. And what I did on the next card is I layered it up multiple times. So this element actually has multiple depths to it. So the backing panel I cut out of the darkest shade of pink. So that's on the lowest level. Then the outline die is cut out of white, and that's my second level. And that's white 80-pound paper. The mid-tone pink I cut out of 110-pound paper, and I inlaid that back in. So from technically it's kind of on the same level as the white, but because it's thicker cardstock, it's 110 versus 80 pound, it's raised above the white. So you kind of get that extra little bit of dimension there. And then the lightest pink is 2 layers of 110-pound paper. So it's going to be your topmost, and ultimately at the end of the day you get 4 different levels. And it's a subtle effect, but it looks really nice to the naked eye, and it just adds that extra bit of dimension, the extra bit of interest. And it is, like I said, a lot of die cutting. And instead of just putting little bits of cardstock just where I need, which a lot of times is what I do. Like for the leaves, I cut this out of some of, I forget the name of it, but it's one of the specialty cards from Tonic that actually has kind of leaf veins and everything. I just cut little bits of that paper off, and I just put it over these portions of the die where I wanted it. That way you don't waste a lot of cardstock. But for the pink areas, I just die cut the whole thing out of the various colors of or shades of pink. And that way it's a lot easier. You just do the one pass, and you get the whole image, which you can use in other projects too. So I thought that turned out really well, and I like using the 2 shades of green also because there's multiple shades of pink, so I thought that turned out well too. And if you don't have embossing folders, especially since all of my cards are 5x7, but I don't have a ton of 5x7 embossing folders, what I did was on this panel, I just took a plain white cardstock, and using my my scoreboard, I just scored lines down, and I just scored it randomly, a 1/4 inch or 1/8 of an inch apart, and just did that across the whole panel. And so it just gives you really subtle texture and interest, but it just makes that white space look complete and not so blank, So then the frame, I used a cut and emboss folder from Crafter's Companion. This one is called Leon. And I have, if you saw my Valentine's Day cards, then you will have noticed that I used the heart-shaped version of this. I'm really glad that I got this bundle. It was like, I think a set of 6 of them, and it was a fantastic price. So it was definitely one of those, well, if I don't like it, I wouldn't feel too sad about spending that money. But these are really fantastic because it's cut and embossed, so you run it through and you get the really great frame, plus you get whatever drops out of the aperture. So in the case of a heart, you actually get a little heart that you can then use on the same card or a different card. In this case, you get a nice rectangle that can be an element on a different card. And so they're really fantastic, and I'm finding more and more use of them, and the embossing is just really pretty too. It's a standard embossing folder, so it's not a 3D one, but it's really nice. And then this sentiment actually came from that same oval layering die set, stamp and die set from Sizzix. And the little butterflies here, that actually came from this, which is the stamp set that goes along with the layering frame collection and from Tonic. And these little butterflies are so cute, and they're perfect because they're actually, the wings are the exact same shape as the die cut. So I just thought it was such a good match. The only difference is that the die cut doesn't have the little tail, whereas the stamp does. But the wings are the same shape, so it just works really well. And I was kind of playing with the idea of, these are butterflies flying out of the frame, and as they fly out, they gain color. So that was sort of the look and intention behind those. This is definitely up there in the running for one of my favorite cards out of this set. Okay, so then the next one that I created was this card where I had so many die cuts of the light pink, and as I mentioned, I die cut the whole thing. So I took that outline, and because I die cut the whole thing, I thought, let me just inlay the pieces that aren't the flower, because I obviously used a lot of the flower pieces, and I had all of these extra pieces left over, so I thought, let's just use it and see how it looks. And so I basically inlaid back in everything but the flowers, and I really loved how that looked. It's the first time that I've actually use an outline of a color that wasn't white, black, or gold, something that is just kind of, I guess, more standard for me anyways. So having the outline in a colored cardstock is a little bit different for me in the first place. And then this was also the first time that I inlaid the same cardstock back into the outline die. I mean, usually if I'm going to do inlaying, I inlay a different color, to, have, as a way to kind of color in that outline die. But I really love the effect of this. It's so clean and simple, and it draws your eye to the flowers, and but it's so subtle, and it's overall that's the effect that I went with the whole card, is just to keep it just the two colors, just the pink and the white, and I love how simple and clean a card it creates. For the background, what I did was that same technique of just using my scoreboard to score lines. Instead, I put it on the diagonal. And there was a smarter way of doing this where you could cut your panel to the size that you need, and then just angle your paper on your scoreboard, and then score lines that way. But what I did was I actually I just scored an entire sheet of cardstock, and then I kind of put my card where I wanted, and then I outlined I outlined my paper so that I could just cut with the lines angled the way I wanted. That meant that the rest of that sheet was kind of scrap paper, but it meant that I also got, the lines exactly the way I wanted, and it was easier to score because I could still hold the full sheet of cardstock against, the edges of the scoreboard. So I did it for just, I guess, quickness and just to get this lined up exactly how I wanted, but you could definitely do it more in a better way to kind of conserve paper if you want. But because I had leftover of that panel, I decided to use it on this card. This card came about because, again, I had another layer of that light, the lightest pink from this, where I die cut it twice. So I had two outlines and, two full sets of all the leaves. I loved how this one turned out, but I thought, well, what would happen if the backing plate was specialty paper? And so I used some of the mirror card that came in the kit, and that's the backing plate, with just some cardstock out of my stash as the outline, and to fill in the non-flower bits of this die. I love how that turned out, and it's just the same technique as this, but just swapping in, the foil card just makes it look like classy. This looks, simple and clean, but this looks really classy, and it's the same pink, but just using that really beautiful mirror cardstock just brings it up a notch. And then this is some of the handcrafted cotton paper that came in the kit, and I had thought about, for this white panel that has the score lines, I had thought about cutting another panel and then scoring lines on it, but I thought about using this one mostly because I didn't want to cover up all of this really pretty handmade cotton paper, because it's got so much texture and it's so pretty, and I think the flower, the rosettes really match this die specifically. So I wanted to show more of that off, and it's kind of an unusual card in terms of just that angle, having that angle there, but I think it makes it look a little bit more interesting, and really just, gives you more of a glimpse of that beautiful paper behind there. And this is another one of the Tonic frames, and that sentiment came from the layering frame stamp set that goes with that collection. And just a couple more butterflies, or a few more butterflies to finish it off. I might go back in and maybe add some Nuvo drops to some of these, but I feel like they don't even really need them, just because of the you know, the different textures on them and the different styles of cardstock, and I think they're pretty good on their own without the drops. So I don't know which way I'll go on that ultimately. But my plan for these cards is I'm actually gonna kind of combine them in two sets of five and then give them away as gift sets to some family and friends, either for maybe for their birthdays, or maybe I'll hold on to it until Christmas and give it to folks as part of their Christmas present. I do love to kind of bundle together my cards and give them away as gifts to family and friends, because I make so many cards and I don't sell them, and I make way more than I actually use and give out. So it's a nice way to kind of, still continue crafting and at the same time, give my cards out there and get them out there. Although I may, as I accumulate more cards, start to donate them too. I know that there are some pretty great places that always are in need of greeting cards. So I may start doing that as well. But for these particular cards, I'm gonna probably create a little box for them and then give them away as gifts. Well, thanks so much for joining me. I hope that you enjoyed these cards, and until my next video, happy crafting and have a fantastic day. Bye.